Okie doke. 13E. So we'll start with number 1. We have a relation here, right? A relation is a set of ordered pairs. So we have a relation. What we want to determine is the domain and range. So let's just review. Domain is all of the what values? Anyone can chime in. X, good. Yes, good, guys. So our X values, I will underline in blue, right? X is the first ordered pair. We put that in our set notation, which is those braces, and we try to put them from least to greatest. I see a negative number, so -5 will come first, then 2, then 3, then +5. Okay. Now we ask to find our range. The range is the Y values, so I'll underline in green. And again, we'll go least to greatest. So I see a 2, a 5, a 3, and a 6. So 2 is the smallest, then 3, then 5, and then a 6. As I've checked assignments of people who have turned things in, people seem great with domain and range. Remember, try to put it in least to greatest, and then also if anything repeats, you only need it once. But that's been pretty solid. Okay, this is the part that I want to make sure we are okay with. Majority have been, but I still see some people just sort of randomly guessing. So this says identify if this relation is a function. So if we look at our ordered pairs, for something to be a function means that the X values cannot repeat. So the first one is a 5. Do I see 5 showing up again as an X value?
Yeah.
So then this is a great example right now, is I only have to focus on the X value. So look at those arrows. Is there a 5 I'm pointing to on the arrow? No, there's a -5, right? But that's still a different number. And then there's this guy, which is a 5, but it's in the Y location. It's a range. So it's okay that the 5 repeats there. It just can't repeat again as an X. So that one's okay. Then I do the same thing. I look at the 2. Is 2 showing up in an X? No, it only shows up as a Y again. So that one's fine. How about a 3? It only shows up as a Y. It's never in one of those circled or arrowed locations again. And then same thing with -5. So this is a function. The X's do not repeat. Does that clarify that a little bit? Okay. I'm going to skip number 2. You guys will go back to that one. Very similar. Just remember, inputs is like the same thing as domain. It's your X values. Outputs is your Y values. Okay. Let's look at number 3. So please make sure you're following along with us. Down to number 3. For the following relation to be a function, X cannot equal what? So we just talked about that functions mean that the X's can't repeat. So I look at the X values that were already given. Are any of them repeating so far? No, so we're good. It is a function. So to maintain it being a function just means X can't be any of those X values. And that has looked pretty good on people who have submitted work. Seems like you understand that.
You have to write these ones in order?
You don't have to. This one happens to be in order, but you don't have to.
Okay.
Any questions so far? All right, let's look at the next set. So this is what we talked about yesterday. This was our new part yesterday. So for number 4, it says, evaluate f of 0. What does this mean? What does f of 0 mean to do?
Plug it in, right?
Yeah, in for where?
For F.
Kind of,
No.
sort of. In
No,
for the X value, okay? Because notice here, like f of X and now f of 0, what's changed is that there's a 0 instead of the X. So it's going to say f of 0 equals negative 3 times 0 plus 2. And I'm evaluating. So I'm actually going to perform all those operations. So multiply first. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. And then 0 plus 2 is 2. So there's the answer. Okay? You guys try 5 and 6. When you have finished 5 and 6, put your answer into the private chat. Okay? 5 and 6. Go for it. I'll give you guys like 2 minutes. Great job. Those of you who have sent in your answers, you're doing a great job. And remember, everyone can try. Maybe you just can do one of them. Give me the answer to one of them at least. Or we can type, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's be engaged and participating in some way or another. You're communicating with me that either you understand it or you need some help. Okay, let's take a look. So lots of correct answers and a few mistakes. So let's make sure to take a look. Again, great job to everybody who participated. I appreciate that. And fantastic job to those that got it right. So for number 5, when we do f of 2, it means we plug 2 in for x. One thing that I'm noticing, because as I look at answers, I can sometimes tell what people are doing wrong, is the negatives and positives. So make sure we're using our negatives correctly. So for number 5, this is what it should look like. F of 2 equals negative 3 times 2. Notice I'm putting it right on in for that x value. And now order of operations. We're just simplifying that right-hand side. Careful here that negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And now negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So many of you got that right. A couple people, I saw answers of like 8, which means I think you dropped your negative. For number 6, same type of thing. We're going to plug in negative 8 in for x. So we have negative 3 now times negative 8 plus 2. Watch your negatives, right? A negative times a negative is a positive, 24, plus 2 gives me 26. Okay, so handful of you guys had both those answers. Great job. And again, thank you to everyone who participated. I'll leave that there for one moment before I slide down. Anyone have any questions though from 4 and 6? Those especially who didn't participate. Are we clear? All right, then let's move on down. I'm going to pause on 7, 8, and 9 because I'm going to have you guys try those. Super similar, right? It's just we have a different function. Instead of function f, it's called g, but it's the same idea. We plug those numbers in for x, okay? Let's scroll to 10 now, though. This is what's different. Number 10 says find x. So are we going to plug in for x? No, we're going to go find x. So what this means is plug in 9 for f of x. I'm going to write that with words. Plug in 9 for where I see f of x. So in my equation here, f of x was the first thing on the left. So I'm going to put a 9 there. Equals, and I'm looking for x, so I have -1 plus 5x. I'm leaving x blank. I'm trying to figure out what it is. Okay, so when it says evaluate like before, we plug in for x. When it says find x, we don't plug in for x. And now we simplify. We get x alone, so I'll have to add 1. So we get 10 equals 5x. And now divide through by 5. So we get x equals 2. Okay, what I want you to try is 11 and 12. And same deal. Once you have those, put them into the chat. Maybe, like I said, you just find one of them. That's fine. Give me an answer to one of them. Okay, but everybody go ahead and take a couple minutes to try 11 and 12. I'm seeing some good answers. Good. All right, I'm seeing a decent handful of answers. So let's check some of these, okay? So 411, okay? The first thing we're going to do is have this so it says negative 16 equals negative 1 plus 5x. We're using that same equation I boxed in at the top. Okay, so we plug in negative 16 for f of x, and now we're looking for x. Gabe, what will I do next?
You add +1 to each side, right?
Perfect, yes. So when we do that, negative 16 plus 1 gives me negative 15 equals 5x. Now I'm trying to get x completely alone. So now what operation would I use, Gabe?
Division.
Bingo. So we divide by 5, right? Getting that x alone. And that will give me negative 3 equals x.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If you were entering the answer to say number 11 on IXL, would you keep it as negative 3 equals x, or would you move it to x equals negative 3?
I don't think that they would mark you wrong either way. I would probably say x equals negative 3.
And then if you were doing like 7, 8, or 9, would you do G parenthesis 5?
I would have to see the directions on the certain question that you have. Because it might just want you to just put the number in. Like maybe it just wants you to type in negative 3, instead
like
of
I'm not doing it in specific, but I mean, I'm assuming this is what we would be doing for IXL, so I was wondering.
I think it'll be clear. Like it'll either say, and if we have time, I can pull one of them up. But either like maybe it will say x equals, and then there's a box, and you just have to type in the number. You know what I mean?
Oh,
or maybe it just says like g of 2 equals, and you have to type in the number. I would assume it's more along the lines of you're just going to type in the number for the answer on IXL, not actually like x equals or f of x equals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we can take a look later.
Okay.
Alrighty, and then number 12, we're going to do the same type of thing. Remember, we're using the equation at the very top, which is f of x equals negative 1 plus 5x. So I'm putting in negative 1 for f of x, and then we have the negative 1 plus 5x. Now I'm going to scroll down. Okay, don't get confused here. To get x alone, we add 1, and negative 1 plus 1 is 0. It's okay to have zeros. When we divide, we still keep a 0. So this is simply that x equals 0. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to pause for one moment, and then I think there's one more set of problems that I want to go over together as a class, and then we'll have you guys go finish. Okay. So yes, scrolling to 13 now. Okay. So don't get scared that this looks like a lot. We just need to come up with an equation in our variables. So for 13, it says write an equation in function notation. All that means, instead of writing our equations like we used to that said y equals, we say f of x equals. Okay? So you're planning to install a carpet in your bedroom, and you want to determine the cost. The carpet you pick out will cost $13.5, so $13.50 per yard, plus a cutting fee of $35. So what does x represent, and what is our function going to be? So we are, and I'm just going to start this one for you, we're trying to figure out our total cost, and that's going to be based upon the size of your room, the number of yards. So x is going to represent the number of yards. If you are writing things and you don't have this printed out, just please, for number 13, start with saying x equals number of yards, or x represents number of yards. You don't need to copy the whole sentence. Now we're going to write our equation in function notation. So again, the only difference here than what we used to do is instead of saying y equals, we're going to say f of x equals. That's what function notation means. And what we're trying to figure out is our cost. So can someone tell me what my equation will be to determine cost?
Um, 13.50x plus 35.
Excellent. Okay, so here's my function notation equation. F of x, or that really means y equals, so the cost is going to equal $13.50 per yard, because we said x is yards, plus the one-time cutting fee of $35. Okay, so 14 says use the function to find the cost for 14 yards. Well, we said x is yards. So what does that mean? Am I plugging in 14 for f of x or for x?
For x.
For x. Good. So this is going to be f of x equals 1350 times 14 plus 35. I'm looking for the cost. I know the yards. Yards we said was x, so that's why I plugged it in for x. Very similar to like those problems that we used to always do. Now we will multiply. So 1350 times 14 gives me $189 plus that cutting fee. So now 189 plus 35 gives me 224. So that means it will cost $224. Any questions with that? Okay, so 15 is a similar type of a thing. You're going to read the scenario, describe what x should be and what your function should be. Then you're going to go find for 5 pounds. So everybody read the scenario, and then in the private chat, tell me what your function is, and then I'll fill it in. Okay, we have a couple minutes here, so I'm going to give everybody a minute to read that, and then in the private chat, tell me what my function should be. Go ahead. Good job, Tim, Moses, Victoria. Dom, yes, that is even going further ahead on 16, but yes, that is the correct process there. Okay, so let's write this down before our class is over. All right, again, great job for those of you who are participating. So for 15, in this case, we're purchasing a gift of dried fruit for your Uncle Manny. A mail order company sells dried fruit for $4.50 per pound. There's an additional shipping fee. So X is going to represent the number of pounds. of fruit. Now, when it comes to our equation, make sure we have an equal sign, right? An equation means equals. So we're going to have f of x equals, it's 450 per pound, so 450x plus the shipping charge. That was the equation I was looking for.